Hey guys, Joe Miles here with Osseo Gear. This is the Mission Whitetail podcast. We're going to be doing a deep dive into what it truly takes to kill these mature bucks. We're going to step outside the box and look at the why for gear, tactics, training, and more importantly, the mindset from over 35 years of chasing these magnificent animals all over North America. Thank you for following along and welcome to Mission Whitetail. All right, guys, welcome back to the Mission Whitetail podcast. This is our second episode, and I've got Kevin Ackim here with me today. And I wanted to kind of recap our first podcast with the guys from GBRS Group, DJ Shipley and Cole Fackler. You know, I went up there and trained with them and got some concealed weapons training and some shooting training. And, you know, we kind of hit it off and became buddies. And I thought it would be fascinating to get them to sit down with us and kind of go through their SEAL Team 6 mindset, if you will, because it was unbelievable to me how they approach things, you know, just from a daily perspective. And they're a wealth of knowledge and how to really take things that are, you know, at a high level, but then even take them to the absolute extreme. And I learned so much from them about mindset. And you know, you hear these buzzwords in hunting about mindset. You know, people say, oh, you got to have a good mindset. Well, what does that really mean? You know, what does it mean to have a good mindset? And that's part of what we want to do at Mission Whitetail is to dive into these buzzwords. And, you know, FOC is a buzzword that comes to mind. You know, mindset, become an expert. You know, those things are part of what we want to dive deep into. And what I took away from the GBRS guys is your mindset has to be at a level where you obsess over the smallest of the details and become ultra efficient and proficient and really become an expert. And that's something that can equate to your bow hunting. Now it's apples and oranges when, you know, they're hunting the world's, you know, roughest terrorist, but the mindset can be transformed over into the hunting space. And so what do you mean by that? You know, what do you mean by becoming ultra proficient, having the right mindset, obsessing over the smallest details? You know, so it's your bows, your arrows, your broadheads, your stands, your optics, your clothing. You know, it's everything that we can control. We need to become experts in and understand it. For example, you know, you look at your boot selection. You know, you go to Cabela's or Bass Pro and you buy a pair of rubber boots and you're good. Well, no, that's not the right mindset. You need to look at your boot and say, okay, what weather am I wearing it in? How bad is it going to make my feet sweat? You know, what kind of insulation does it have? What's the tread like? If I'm going in where it's going to be super muddy and I have this really thick, aggressive tread and I'm going to carry that up into my lock-on stand and at 10 o'clock in the morning it dries and I'm moving and that mud falls out because that tread's so thick, that's obsessing over that small detail. Fletchings. You know, you just buy arrows from the shop, put them on your bow, and you shoot them. No, obsessing over that detail and having the right mindset would be testing those fletchings. You know, the length of them, the height of them, how they're bent, the helical, the offset, you know, how much noise they make, how well are they steering your arrows, shooting them out compared to other ones. You know, that's the mindset and the obsessing of the details.
Yeah, those guys are awesome. I think I watched every video and listened to every podcast out there that they're in, and I'm always picking up little tidbits of information that can not only help me in my hunting, but in everyday life. And if you apply that, just those little tidbits, it doesn't have to be, if for only military and law enforcement guys. You can do it for your everyday life, and you'll be better in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a lawyer, if you're an accountant, if you're a plumber. It doesn't matter. If you want to be the best at whatever industry it is, those principles of obsessing over the details and putting in the work, because at the end of the day, that's what it takes. It takes the work. You know, whether you're producing a podcast,
right?
You know, a simple thing like this, you know, you can run off half-cocked and not know exactly what you're doing, or you can really obsess over and get prepared and really know what's going on. It doesn't matter what you're doing in life. The mindset, again, is what can take you to the highest level.
Well, I mean, prime example, you went up and trained with them last summer, came back, and you took some of those points and things that you learned from them, and you had your best season ever.
Yep.
So prime example right there. You never know where you can learn along the way and get even better at your craft.
Yeah, and it's not taking shortcuts.
Right.
And it's understanding what you're doing. And just to hit on the mindset again, because that's such a big part of the Mission Whitetail podcast, you know, with mindset, there's a couple things that really stand out and you need to pay attention to. And it's not just a word, a buzzword, but you need to understand the why in everything that you do that's bow hunting related. Why am I hunting a particular property? Why am I shooting this type bow? Why do I shoot these broadheads? Why do I shoot these arrows? And on and on and on it goes. And you need to be able to answer that question. And if you can't answer that question, then you need to educate yourself and get with experts in that area and figure out the why. You know, the answer would be, now this is hypothetical, you know, to the why I'm shooting a Matthews bow. Because I have tested it against other bows. It's faster, it's quieter, you know, and you've actually chronographed the bow, shot it through a chronograph against other bows with the same poundage, same draw length, and you've gotten a decibel reader or borrowed somebody's decibel reader and shot the bows right next to each other. You know, you're figuring out the why. You know, it can go to broadheads. Why am I shooting a Rage Trypan? Okay, the why is it's a mechanical broadhead because they're more accurate, they're quieter, and they have a larger cutting diameter. That would be a why for that. And that really can go into anything that you do that's bow hunting related.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I'll say about us. We don't just take another guy's word for it. If they say, yeah, this bow's the best, or this arrow or broadhead, whatever is the best, we actually take those bows or broadheads and we'll test them. They might not be the most scientific thing or test, but we'll actually test them, and then we'll say, okay, this one did better than I thought. Maybe I'll go with this one, or vice versa. So we don't just take people's word for it.
Yeah, brand neutral, 100% brand neutral. And you know, 2 years ago, I was hung up with one particular bow brand, and I switched.
Yep.
You know, once I got in, and we're talking about frog's hair here.
Right.
It was a smidge quieter, and it was a smidge faster, but that's important.
Right.
Right. When you're trying to get to the top tier level, those little things do make a difference. Continuing with the mindset, you know, you've got to mentally make a plan and execute it, right? So a lot of guys will go into the woods, they'll walk in there kind of arbitrarily, find a scrape, find a rub, hang a stand, and hunt. You really need to make a mental plan, right or wrong, because that's how you learn. Okay, I scouted this last October. I know this is where they were bedding. This is where they were feeding. So I'm going to go in and hang here. And my hope is on a northwest wind, they're going to come out of this bedding in the afternoon and they're going to go to this food plot or this food source or this acorn tree. I'm going to intercept them here. I need a northwest wind, and that way I can slip out of there and nothing ever knows I was there. Now, that's obviously oversimplified, but that's the type mindset and making a plan that you've got to do.
Yeah, and to that point, as long as you have a plan, if it doesn't work, well, you say, well, this plan didn't work. I know, I have an idea of why it didn't work, instead of just going, like you said, half-cocked, and you just say, okay, well, he didn't show up this time. I'm going back the same way again and just going to hope.
Yeah, and that's certainly fine, and you can enjoy hunting that way. But if you want to get better, if you make a plan and execute it and stick with it, right or wrong, you're going to learn, and that's how you improve. That's how you will get better. I use an example here all the time. I walk into some of these food plots and I see where these permanent ladder stands are hung, and they're in the middle of the food plot.
Yep.
And so we get a lot of west wind here in the winter, and here in South Carolina, and you've taken half the food plot away because of the wrong wind, and the purpose there was that they put it in the middle because it was an easy tree and they could cover the whole plot with a shorter shot each way. And that is a plan, but it's not necessarily the right plan. If the stand had been put at the entrance where you can just see into the food plot, then you're able to get in and out of the stand a lot easier not easier, but you're able to get in and out of the stand without getting busted.
Yep.
Because in those afternoon sits on a food plot, when they fill up with deer and you've got to get out, you've either got to slip out of the stand where they can't see you, or you got to get somebody to come in and bump the food plot with a truck or something like that. So that's something that just paying attention and making a plan is vitally important with your mindset.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I've learned from working with you the past 10 years, following you around with a camera. I was one of those guys who just, okay, he didn't show up today. I'm going to keep hunting the same spot, burn it out, and I don't know why he's not showing up. I'm not going to move. This is where I usually see deer. But when I started working with you, following you around, it was, I guess, the first couple of years, it was like information overload, the amount of light bulbs that went off. But now that I've started incorporating the plan and the why into my hunting strategies, it's my success rate's just gone through the roof.
Yeah, you've knocked down some really good South Carolina deer in the last couple of years, and you're getting your small, permission spots. You're learning the public, and another part of the mindset overall plan, if you will, is setting goals, right? That's another thing mentally that you need to do. Your goal may be to get a doe with a bow. It's a perfectly fine goal. Your goal may be to, try and shoot the biggest buck on the property that you have access to. It may be just to shoot a buck. Whatever that goal is that you set it and you don't compromise that goal. You've set your goal for the biggest buck on the property, and 3 days in, a nice 8-point comes by and you shoot him. Okay, you've compromised your goal, and if you had stuck to it, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the road, you may have gotten the goal and accomplished it. And so that's another important thing, is setting goals and sticking with them.
Yep. I agree 100%. Another thing, this is off topic, but you said the small tracts of permission spots or leases. That's another big thing that I learned from you. I'd rather have the perfect 5 acres over the worst 5,000 acres.
Without a doubt. I mean, if you're able to control it and be the one that goes in there and hunts it the way you want to hunt it, and you don't have to contend with other folks, you're way better off having 10 acres than you are having 2,000 hunt club with 50 people running around on it. No doubt about that. We kind of hit on mindset and the why, and I think the why of Mission Whitetail podcast, why we are doing this, is that I thought it would be important to have a podcast that was 100% brand neutral, and one that could help us become better hunters, and the information that we gather and put together by bringing in experts in individual fields, whether that be a whitetail biologist that understands deer vision or a doctor that understands human odor. We're going to be doing some stuff really outside the box. But the purpose of this is to really have an honest dialogue with experts in the whitetail bow hunting field and bring it to guys, and we all become better hunters. That's the purpose of, or the why behind Mission Whitetail.
Yeah, I think that just goes back to like the gear and things that you use. We're not just taking other people's word for it on how the deer see or how they smell or hear. We're actually going to the experts and letting them teach us on how to be better hunters and how to trick these freaking deer.
Yeah, geniuses. I mean, they're masters of their environment. When they get to 5, 6, 7 years old, they become sometimes, not unkillable, but you sure think that about them.
For sure. They turn into ghosts.
Yep, no doubt. And I think another thing that's going to be unique about our podcast is that, I'm an older guy that has, a career that have been in the hunting industry for, over 20-something years. Started out as a professional hunter in Africa, started a couple businesses, and, am in a completely different spot in my life than you are. We're both obsessed and passionate about chasing these deer with a bow and arrow, but we're in completely different spots in our lives. I'm going to be an empty nester here in about 3 weeks. My son graduates from high school, goes to college, and so my goals and I guess my hunting style or how I tackle the season is going to be a little bit different than how you do it. Personally, I am hunting or trying to find the biggest deer in North America. Yep. Whether that be Mexico, Alberta, Kansas, I don't care where they are. That is what I'm trying to do, and I'm able to really commit to that. And if I go to Kansas and I've got a terrible wind for 5 or 6 days, or it heats up or whatever, I'm able to come home or adjust or go, to Alberta or whatever. That's just kind of where I am, and I'm able to commit, obsess, and lock down on a particular deer and basically hunt him for the season. And you have got a young family, a young career that you're building. You've got a huge workload, and so it's kind of different, where we are as far as in our lives. And I think that's unique because we're going to have a lot of listeners that are in my boat and a lot that are in your boat. So we're getting two different perspectives and two different attack plans on our hunting.
Yeah, I think we'll have a vast variety of info out there between the two of us. You're very accomplished in business and in your hunting career, and I feel like 29 years old, I'm just getting going in both, really pushing through. I got the same type goals kind of as you, killing the biggest, oldest deer in the area, but it'll be more localized. I'll be hunting more close to home. If I do travel out of state, it better be the right time to go, or I'm going to be coming home empty-handed for the season and eating tag soup. But yeah, everybody will be able to relate to one of us for sure.
And I think that's important. I'm going to go off a little bit of a tangent here, but we talk about who guys are getting their advice from, if you will, or who they're following or trying to learn from, and it's vitally important to listen to people that hunt the same way or in the same area that you hunt in. If you've got a 100-acre lease of cutover here in the swamp of South Carolina, and you're listening to a guy that lives in Iowa on 5,000 acres with 90% ag and small drainage funnels on stand placement and stuff like that, it's not relatable. And that goes, into equipment too. If you're listening to a guy that shoots 4 or 5 hogs a year in Florida about what broadhead and arrow selection you need for whitetail hunting in Kansas, that's not ideal. You want to find somebody that is accomplished in whatever it is. I don't care if it's pistol shooting or mathematics or whatever. You want to find somebody that's accomplished and an expert in that area that relates to what you're doing, so you can really learn and get feedback from somebody that's done it in the area on the type deer that you're hunting. I don't think anybody will argue that the deer in the southeast, especially here in South Carolina, because our season comes in August 15th, it runs to January 1st. You can hunt them with rifles all year long. You can shoot 5 bucks. You can shoot a bunch of does. You can run them with hounds. Those deer are highly pressured, and we've got tons of cover. We've got these big, wood lots that have been cut over or timber stands, and there's not a lot of funnels. There's not a lot of places where you can trap them. So you have to become an edge hunter and a scrape hunter and a food, a source guy, and vice versa. A guy that's hunting a 10,000 acre, or that's ridiculous, a 1,000 acre farm in Illinois that as soon as the crops get out, these deer are pinched down. And that's not talking negative about the guys that hunt in Illinois. I hunt in Illinois. I love, it's one of my favorite places to hunt, because if you're going to shoot a booner with any consistency, those are the states that you have to go to. But it pinches the deer down, and it does definitely make them easier to hunt. A 5-year-old buck is a 5-year-old buck, but their ability to evade you in some of the Midwest places is not as easy as it is for them to evade you in big open country. And again, the point of that statement is to say that you guys, we need to get our advice from people that have been there and done that in the areas and what we're trying to do.
Yeah, if I want to shoot, a mature buck in South Carolina in the swamp, I'd probably go to you for sure. Or if I want to shoot a mature big deer in Kansas, I'll go to you or Chris Seymour or somebody like that who's really dove into it and they know that area really, really well.
Yeah. Another thing, we can switch gears just a little bit here too, maybe dip back to the GBRS guys. When you are trying to become a better bow hunter, right? That's what we're all about, becoming a better bow hunter. You're going to have to cut things, and you're going to have to cut people out of your life. You're on Saturdays, instead of going and playing golf in April and May, you might need to be going and knocking on doors and trying to get access, right?
Right.
In the evenings, instead of watching Netflix, you may want to be in your garage, working on your form, blind bail shooting, working on your release. Those are things you're going to have to cut out, things that you have been doing to become a better hunter and become ultra efficient at what you do. And that also means you might have to cut some people out. Right. If that's what you want to do. If you're at a hunt club, or you've got a lease with 4 or 5 guys, and they're not going to be as serious about it as you, they're not going to, pay attention to what they're doing, you might have to cut out of that, because the end state is what's important if you want to become a better, more efficient bow hunter.
Yeah, if you're going to be, hunting with buddies, it's good to have like-minded, not just, you might be like-minded in that you like hunting, but you want to be on the same level. So, meaning if you're going to go hunting, you're not there for vacation. You're there to go after that 5-year-old buck that you've been after for, you didn't get a shot at them a year ago. You've been after them this whole off season, checking trail cameras and scouting them, and you want to get it done. You're not going to sit around and drink beer. You're going to kill that buck, get to bed early, kill that buck, and get home to your family.
Yeah. I mean, I think back to the first time that you went with me to Illinois for the rut. And I was going to bed at 6 o'clock at night, and I'm in my 30s, and you're like, what is wrong with this guy, right? You're going to bed at 6 o'clock, 6:30 at night. Well, because everybody else is staying up and shooting pool and drinking beer and that sort of stuff, and because I know 15 days into this, you're not going to be able to function.
Yep.
And I know, and what happens 15 days in?
Yeah, ask me how I know.
15 days in, getting guys off the couch to get out the door. I'm not saying you, but
oh, it got brutal.
Yeah. So that's the point. Is again, it's fine to do all of that, right? It's just not for me or for what we're trying to do, because we are fixated and obsessed with becoming the best possible whitetail hunter that we can become.
Yeah, and it just goes back to the goals. If you want to just, if you don't have a target buck, or you're just going after whatever comes by, that's perfectly fine. You probably still have pretty good odds. But if you were trying to outsmart a 4.5-year-old plus buck, good luck with cutting corners and doing things the easy way.
Yeah, you're just not going to get it done.
Right.
All right, so with the podcast, we're going to obviously be bringing experts on in different areas and doing a real deep dive into the different aspects of chasing these big deer, and 3 things that are really important to always consider: scent, sight, and sound.
Right.
Those are the 3 senses that we're constantly trying to overcome. Now, we're going to have guys that come in that are scent experts and that understand whitetail vision. And so we're not going to go down a huge rabbit hole today with those, but I just want to let you guys know that's coming. This is kind of an intro to what Mission Whitetail is all about. But the scent, the sight, and the sound, you've got to keep those in the forefront of your mind with everything that you do. Is this helping keep my odor down? Is this helping me hide from the deer? And is this making me quieter? And if you are constantly thinking about those things, you're going to improve. You're going to get better. We talk about scent, and that's a pretty big debated topic.
Yep.
You get some guys that are showering every day. They are, spraying down with the scent prevention sprays. They're running the ozonics machines, and they're successful. They're washing their clothes in scent-free detergent. They're keeping them in the scent-free lockers. They're running the ozone machines in there. And you've got guys in that camp. You've got guys kind of halfway that'll take a shower, but maybe they don't run the ozonics or spray down. And then you've got guys that don't do anything.
Yep.
So my thinking is, if it can't hurt you, why would you not do it, other than the time factor and the expense? Right? It costs to buy those detergents and those ozone machines to keep your clothes and all that. So those are valid points. But I think you should do everything in your power to help eliminate as much of your human odor as you can. Because in 35 years of bow hunting, scent is the most important thing.
For sure.
If they smell you and get enough of your odor, a mature deer, it is over. And anything you can do, because I think a deer makes a decision, right? They make a decision based on what they smell. If it's 4 days old, they may come right on through there. If it's immediately in their face, body odor, human danger, it's a whole nother whirlwind. If, I have seen younger deer, 2-year-old bucks, 1.5-year-old bucks, 1.5-year-old does, that get a whiff of you but come right on through. They want to go to where they're going. And if that 1.5-year-old doe had a mature 5-year-old behind her and you can get her past you and that mature buck comes into range and you can zip an arrow into him, it's worth it.
Right.
So we're not going to go down the huge rabbit hole of scent control because we'll have some experts on. I'm going to get some bloodhound guys in and some doctors and stuff to really talk about it. Sight's another thing. We're going to have a biologist come on that talks about what deer actually see and what they don't see. There's huge debates about that. Obviously, everybody, I think, can agree on sound. The quieter you are, the better.
For sure. Yeah, that's another thing, not to beat a dead horse, but that's another thing I picked up with hunting from you. I look at your sticks and things like that, and they're all wrapped in hockey tape, or you got your gear packed in your backpack a certain type of way, so you're not clanking through things to get to your binos or whatever when you first get in the stand. That's a big takeaway from hunting with you. And another thing is the scent. The way you get in and out of the tree, getting to the stand, so you're not walking through where the deer is going to come, or the least possible way the deer would come through.
Yeah, it's just those three things: scent, sight, sound. That's what gets you in the game and keeps you in the game. And what you have to constantly, you're constantly fighting those things. Those are the senses that you're constantly fighting. So we're going to cover a big segment on those three, obviously. We're also going to get into probably the biggest debated thing in the bow hunting industry, and that's broadheads.
Yeah.
You've got fixed blade heads and mechanical heads, and those, people have physically fought over their opinions and their stance on the broadheads. And you're not necessarily right or wrong either way, right? Lots of guys have killed big, mature bucks with mechanical broadheads, and lots of guys have killed big, mature bucks with fixed blade heads. And Don Higgins and I are going to have a very friendly debate.
Yeah,
he and I are buddies, and he is in the heavy arrow fixed blade camp, and I lean more to the mechanical moderate arrow, and he makes really good points, and I think I make really good points, and I've done a lot of testing. And so it's a hugely debated thing, but if you have your reasons why you're doing it and you're successful with it, that's absolutely fine. I don't necessarily look at somebody that shoots a fixed blade head and go, that guy's a doofus, right? I respect that. Sure. And that's fine. And we're not necessarily going to get into the full debate right now, because we'll have to dedicate an entire podcast to fixed blade and mechanical heads, and we'll also get into arrow weights.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We're not on here to bash somebody if they're in one camp or the other. We both shoot fixed and mechanicals. We test them. We've shot deer with them. It's nothing to have a giant meltdown with your buddy about. We should be all together as one, as hunters. We got enough guys on the outside or organizations trying to shut us down. We should just all be buddies, and because we're all in the same boat.
Yeah, and the same goes with the heavy and the light arrows. All of a sudden the heavy arrow has become the be-all, fix-all, and that's not necessarily true. We've proven it. We went so far as to pack our moderately weighted arrows and mechanical broadheads and went across the pond to Africa and shot a bunch of animals over there through the shoulder blades, and jumpy animals that are whitetail size at water holes to prove or to test for my own sanity, because they get bashed so much, and they worked incredibly well. I mean, I don't think I hit one impala back and it went maybe 250 yards because it was shot mostly through the guts, because the vitals on those African game animals are so much further forward than a whitetail deer. But, you know, everything else that was shot through both shoulders, 70 yards.
Yeah, and if you weren't using that big 2-inch cut on that gut shot one, we may not have found that one. Not in 200 yards. So that's something to think about. The guts, that's a way bigger target than the shoulder blade or the scapula or one of those leg bones. So I kind of lean toward the big cut in diameter over the smaller, I guess, quote unquote, deeper penetrating fixed blades.
Yeah, and so guys will talk about failure. And again, we're gonna go down this rabbit hole because we are crazily obsessed with that. But, you know, guys will talk about failure and how the mechanical heads fail, and that's a valid point. It's a very valid point. A mechanical head could potentially open in flight, and it moves on impact. A blade could break off. Those are valid points. So once we get into that, we're going to state our cases, and we're going to have guys that have killed a bunch of big deer with fixed blade heads and let them talk about why that setup is better, and then we all can decide what's best for us.
Yeah, same with the arrow weight that you mentioned. I don't think there's one weight that's any better than the other. We are in the kind of moderately to lower end, lighter weight arrow group, that 450 range, and that's what we like. It gives us enough speed, and the trajectory is a lot flatter than those really heavy arrow weights, and we get plenty penetration on the game that we're after. You proved it on 350 pound Yala. You get plenty of penetration.
Yeah, and you know, if that's what a guy's after, if a guy's after maximum penetration, then yeah, a single bevel fixed blade head with a heavier arrow is going to get him better penetration. There are studies out now, and I read one yesterday from Joel Maxfield, who's with Matthews, who we hope to have. Joel, if you're listening to this, we're going to do our best to get you on the podcast. But, you know, he did a study on arrow weights with I won't have the numbers exactly right here, but it's a 55-pound recurve, 28-inch draw, 350 grain arrow, 650 grain arrow, and out of the recurve, there was a huge difference in the penetration between the heavy arrow and the light arrow. Then he got a 55-pound compound bow, modern compound bow, 55 pounds, 28-inch draw, and shot the arrows, and the lighter arrow out-penetrated the recurve arrow, the heavy recurve arrow, and the light arrow and the heavy arrow were within 3 or 5% of each other. So it's just, I guess the point here is, don't get so lost in the ego and get so lost and drink all the Kool-Aid in one camp or the other. Keep an open mind and be respectful of everybody's opinions and what they shoot, but also you might can learn something by stepping outside the box and listening to other points of views.
Yeah, and that's what we do. We do the same thing as everybody else, watching these videos on arrow builds and broadhead tests. And we don't go all the way in one camp and we don't go all the way in the other. We kind of take the things that we like and have tested and mold them all into one, so it's our own, and see what works the best for us.
Yeah, you know, you've got to step out and be brand neutral And I can promise you that if one bow, one arrow weight, one broadhead, one scent machine was going to give me the slightest advantage, I'm going to use it.
And that's why we're always testing stuff.
I'm trying to get an advantage.
Yep.
I'm trying to get an advantage because everybody that's hunted these big mature deer know how hard it is to get in bow range of these guys. And that's, you know, I guess this would be a little bit of a spoiler alert, but we've got Andre DeQuisto coming on the next episode, and, you know, big buck killing machine. The guy's killed over 20 Boone and Crockett's. He's pioneer in the industry, started lone wolf tree stands and just revolutionized the mobile hunting game, and an icon in our industry, and very humbled and happy to have him on the show. And, you know, we talk about, you know, we kind of pick at each other a little bit about shooting, about shooting. He shoots his bow 3 times a year. He shoots it once to make sure everything's sighted in, and then he shoots it at 2 deer.
Yep.
And there's other guys that don't shoot very much at all, and they kill big deer. You know, I can't do that. I have got to shoot all the time and have the confidence to be able to put that arrow where I want it and when I want it. And I just, again, a different camp. You know, that guy's wall it's probably the most impressive of any whitetail hunter, of wild free-range giants, and he shoots his bow very little.
Yeah, and I think that just goes to show how good of a hunter he is. He purposely sets up right on top of where he thinks these deer are going to be, because he knows he doesn't want to shoot that far. He wants them at 12 steps or 18 steps and in, and they're going to come bebopping along, and he's going to zap them. If they're further than that, he ain't shooting.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and so, again, different perspectives, but for me, anything that I can control, I want to be as proficient with that as I can. But because then if you control it and you've tested it and proven it to yourself, your confidence is way up, and you can make that 34, 35-yard shot in the wind, through the woods, you know, over a limb. You can make that shot, and that's, to me, again, you get so few opportunities at these big deer that you got to do that.
Yeah, I'm just not good enough and confident enough that I can just go in the wood, pick up my bow, and get in the stand and hope that I can hit something at a, you know, past 30 yards. I've messed up shots, you know, at 20 yards before. You never know what's going to happen, and that's just something you can control. If you're practicing consistently and you're familiar with your equipment, you're just going to be that much better.
Yeah. Yep. And you know, another thing that we'll be hitting on here is strategy and tactics, and then access. You know, those things are really important, and something that we can all share in. You know, your strategy, and really take a hunt or a deer and break down. I think we'll do a lot of those, is take a particular deer and break down how we went about it and how we ended up killing him. Yeah,
we've talked about it a good bit already this year, how many videos we're going to make. We're going to, you know, make a video on getting access, make videos on stand placement, you know, looking at a map and breaking it down. So it'll be a lot of fun, and I think there'll be a lot of worth to some guys out there.
Yeah, and access is so huge, and people talk about that all the time. You know, need to knock on doors, need to do this, do that. Well, we need to dive into that, and we'll have a whole podcast on access and, you know, what it takes. What do you look for? You know, we talk about, you know, going and knocking on doors or talking to real estate agents, or how do you find a place out of state that doesn't have a bunch of pressure? I mean, what are you looking for, and how do you get those properties to hunt? So that's something that we're going to talk a lot about, and is probably, hunting big deer is probably the most important thing. If you don't have access and you can't find a deer to hunt, everything else is null and void.
Yeah, you got to go where the deer that are worth hunting are at. And we're not going to just stop at the access of private property. We're also going to touch on some of the public land stuff, whether it be, are you hiking into your spot? Does the property butt up to a river? Can you take a kayak or your boat in there? Or is there a gate at a gravel road you can bike in there? Things like that. I think it'll be real interesting.
Yeah, I mean, going back to that, biking in or how you get into certain properties. We talk about the hunt club that I'm a member of, and how I see deer move so differently through there. We've got a big metal gate at the front of the property, and then guys drive in down a gravel road, and we've got a parking area where we have to park, and then kind of the property rules are from there you take a four-wheeler or a side-by-side, or you walk from that area. And lots of afternoons, I will actually not even pull in the gate. I will pull up, park outside the gate, take my e-bike off, drive my e-bike in to where I need to be, and then get in my stand, and I'm normally in there pretty early. And then as guys start to filter in an hour or 2 hours before prime time, I can hear the gate open. I can hear the trucks come down the gravel road. I can hear the four-wheelers crank up, and off they go. And it never fails when it's that type situation. I will get a group of does that'll pop up and come my way. They hear that stuff going on, and when they get up to go feed, they may have been wanting to go one particular way, because when I don't hear all that, a lot of times I wouldn't see them. And then when I would, and don't think those mature bucks don't pattern you as much as you pattern them. I mean, thinking outside the box.
Yeah, and that goes back to the why. Why do you park outside the gate and not mess with it? And why do you give yourself that extra time to get into the stand because you got to walk or take your bike? Those are thinking outside the box reasons, and that's why you're more successful.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it. And that's making the plan again and sticking with it, right? Whatever that plan is, whether it's, again, the mature doe, your first buck, the biggest deer that you can find, is developing that plan and putting that mission together and executing it and learning as you go. So another funny thing or thinking outside the box. I've got a buddy in Illinois named Mark Wimpy that's got a farm, and this is totally outside the box. He would take a tractor or a front end loader or a old farm truck and drive the perimeter of his farm like 30 minutes before daylight and 3 hours before dark every afternoon, every morning. And those deer would get conditioned to that. And it got to a point where he could drive an old farm truck around his perimeter and see mature deer bedded, and they would just watch him drive by. And then when season came in, he was able to do the same thing and get it, have somebody drive him out, and the deer thought nothing of it. They're used to that. They get very comfortable. I had the 29-acre tract in Illinois that's a lot of guys that follow along have heard those stories a million times. But it was kind of in a residential area that fed out to a big grain belt, and there was a walking path that some of the neighbors in that area would walk, and that's how I accessed. And so deer were absolutely comfortable smelling humans right there. But then you take that to the big woods of South Carolina or Wisconsin or wherever it may be, and they pick up the slightest bit of where you walked in. It's completely different. And I never will forget, hunting a big deer, I went in one morning and walked down the walking path and turned where people didn't walk to get over to my stand. And about 10, I'm there at 5:30 in the morning. 10 o'clock in the morning, I look out in the old cattle pasture. Here comes a big, mature, probably 5-6-year-old doe with 2 fawns with her, and she's bebopping across that cattle pasture, jumps the fence, and boom, she smells right where I turned off that walking path. And she trailed me all the way to the base of the stand, looked up there, blew, and took her 2 fawns out of there. But again, the difference of how your area and what you can and can't get away with.
Yeah, that's like that made me think of the tractor thing and the mature bucks watching Mark drive around. That made me think of some of the stories that Dan Emfault would tell about when he would hunt near some of these hiking paths on the public land that he hunts, and how the mature bucks would pretty much pattern the people coming through there, but he would get away with more of the, I guess, ground scent because of that, because of the bucks being near those walking paths. So he started hunting just off the walking paths, and he's been super successful. Or, the way he thinks outside the box, he calls it dating the fat chick, where you hunt the overlooked spots by the parking lots and things like that, where those big bucks, they know when it's hunting season and they know what to watch out for. They'll sit up on a ridge and watch guys leave and come back to their truck, and they know when it's safe to get up and move around.
And that brings up, a hunt this year. I shot a buck in Mexico and hit him too high and lost him. But when I was blood trailing him, he took me right back to his bedroom, and we followed it. It was probably 300 miles from the ground blind that I was. Did I say 300 miles?
Yeah, 300 yards.
300 miles. Yeah, I tracked him for 300 miles. 300 yards. Yeah, it was long. I was sweating when I went all the way across the border and back. So 300 yards from where I shot him, and his bed was so perfect. There was a rise in that flat country in a really big thicket, and he got up on that rise and bedded where he could overlook the entire flat. He could see the ground blind, and in the afternoons he never would come in because he was laying up there watching, and when the rancher would drive me in and get me in the ground blind, he saw that, and he wouldn't come in. And you don't know that, but in the mornings he would show up, because in the mornings he's been out feeding, and then he would come by in the mornings, and that's when I got a crack at him. But the point is, if you knew that's where he was bedded, then what you would want to do is not have the rancher drive you in there. You'd want to sneak in there on foot,
right,
and mess up his game, because when the rancher didn't drive you in there, he would be there every afternoon.
Right.
So he stood up there and watched the whole thing. So I guess, guys, the Mission Whitetail podcast, again, I'm going to beat a dead horse here, is to help us all get better and bring in some real experts in their areas, their field, hear their stories and their why as to how they do things, and then we can all take bits and pieces of that knowledge and use it to make our craft that much better.
Yeah, and I'm really excited for the next episode. Andre DeQuisto, he's a freaking legend in the big buck killing world, and he's definitely somebody that I like to just sit back and take everything in, because he's been there and done it.
Yeah. So that, guys, that'll be the next episode. We'll have Andre DeQuisto on to talk about Lone Wolf Custom Gear and about his approach and how he goes after big deer and what he does to get properties. It's going to be pretty a fascinating conversation. So appreciate you guys tuning in this week, and we'll be back with you next week. Any questions, comments, let us know. Anything you guys want us to talk about or to test and get results, or any guests that you think we ought to have on, let us know, and we'll keep improving and getting this thing better and helping all of us become better whitetail bow hunters. Thanks, guys.